For more on this situation, I want to welcome on Marc Lotter, the Director of Strategic Communications for the 2020 Trump campaign. So, Marc, we've seen the latest developments regarding the release of these documents, a lot of them pertaining to the 2016 Trump campaign, or at least a lot of activities that were during that time. What do you make of this latest developments regarding not only what we've seen in the transcripts, but also what we see regarding just the general Michael Flynn case in its entirety?
It proves what the president has been saying from day one, that this was a witch hunt and that it targeted him and his campaign. You actually have allegations, and they're supported by external evidence, that Barack Obama was talking himself in the Oval Office as president about things that Michael Flynn, the incoming national security advisor, was saying to the Russian ambassador. I mean, this is clearly that this was a case of the Obama administration politicizing the Department of Justice, the FBI, the national security apparatus to go against the president and the incoming administration.
And Marc, you bring up President Obama, and I think it's really interesting to note that we didn't hear much from him for the past 3 years, for that matter. And even when Vice President Joe Biden was running in the election, he was very late to even come out and endorse him. But over the past week or two, he's been somewhat vocal, relatively more vocal than he's been in the past, whether it's going to be on phone calls with supporters that conveniently get leaked or him just outright making statements. Does that speak anything to you?
Well, I think it says two things. Number one, I think it shows how weak Joe Biden is as their nominee, that they think that the only way they can prop him up is to use Barack Obama. And let's make no mistake, Barack Obama's legacy was on the ballot in 2016. He lost. And he will lose again if he is the standard bearer for 2020 against President Trump. People don't want to see the slow economic growth, the high taxes, the horrible regulations, and the weak foreign policy that are represented by Barack Obama and now Joe Biden. And if that's the way they want to make this election, we're prepared to fight that way and win it.
And I think that's an interesting point, too, because we've talked about the record of Joe Biden in the past and how it just doesn't match up in the Beltway states that you need to win necessarily in order to take back the presidency. We talked about his vote in favor of NAFTA that killed productivity throughout the Midwest. We could talk about the Iraq War, which by itself is just an unpopular decision among any Americans for that matter. We could go through the different things that he's done over the past. And, for example, you're right to say that Hillary Clinton was viewed as an extension of the Obama presidency in 2016. And now we have literally the former vice president of that administration on the top of the ticket this time around. Is the strategy any different this time, or is it basically the same thing that you were doing in 2016?
Well, the big difference is that we have a record of results to run on with President Donald Trump, as opposed to just the promise of results in 2016. The president can show that he created an economy on a rocket ship, and compare that to the miserable recovery that we had under Obama and Biden. He can talk about how, because of his leadership, we were bringing manufacturing back to our country. And by the way, because of the coronavirus, we need to bring manufacturing back to our country again and do it even more, especially as it relates to medical supplies and pharmaceuticals. The president has the right answer on this, while Joe Biden is just an apologist for China, weak on China, and whose son is getting paid by China.
And when it comes to the campaign trail, too, it's going to be a unique one that maybe we've never seen before. We already see Joe Biden doing his type of press conferences from the basement of his home. I don't think he's made an appearance in public for several months now. But when it comes to President Trump, too, a big part of his enthusiasm behind his campaign stemmed from those rallies. I remember during the campaign trail, not only in 2016, but also in 2018, he would sometimes do multiple ones a day in order to help out other candidates. He might not be able to do it this time around. How do you plan on adjusting to this new format?
Well, I wouldn't close the book on rallies just yet. And when we can do them, you know that we will, because the president obviously enjoys them, and they're great opportunities for us to identify voters, get out and motivate our voters. But we can also act digitally. While Joe Biden is in his basement on a rotary telephone with a record player, we're actually putting together digital programming every night of the week that gets a million viewers. Some of them are getting 2.5 million viewers, which puts us up there with CNN programming and most of MSNBC. They don't get 2.5 million people watching. So we can get our message out regardless of whether it's through rally, whether it's through digital. And what I can tell you is it'll probably be this fall, both.
And when it comes to Joe Biden, too, it's a weird thing to admit that we're not even exaggerating when he said his record player. That's something he said during a debate himself. So I guess I'll let Joe Biden speak for himself when it comes to that issue. Marc Lotter, I really appreciate you coming on tonight, breaking down the 2020 election for us. Thank you.
Good to see you, Alex.